Welcome to Second Act Stories. Every 2 weeks, we feature an interview with an inspiring and courageous individual who's pursuing a better life through a second act. I'm your host, Scott Merritt. Andy's still away this week, so once again, I'm happy to dig into the vault to bring you one of my favorite interviews from the early days of Second Act Stories before I joined the show. Today's From the Vault episode features Noa Shaw. Noa lived a hard life. Early on, he found his way to drugs and alcohol, and for most of his adult life, he was an addict and a dealer. One fateful day, he wandered into his SoulCycle studio in Los Angeles, and his life changed forever. He cleaned up his act, he started to attend classes, and ultimately, he became one of SoulCycle's most successful instructors. At the time of this interview, he was also the oldest. Originally released in March 2021, this episode is titled, How an Overweight Drug Dealer Became a SoulCycle Instructor. I hope Noa Shaw inspires you as much as he inspires me. Here's his second act story.
You've written this book, Stop Thinking Thoughts That Scare You, and you start the book with 4 really powerful words, which are, I should be dead.
How many ways should I be dead? Well, I've tried to commit suicide 3 times due to being in such a dark and lonely and scared place that, I just thought it was better off being dead. I've had multiple near ODs on drugs. I've had people try to kill me. I've had people try to throw me off a balcony 3 stories up. I've had people shoot at me. I've had people stab me. So there are a million reasons or a million times that I could have been dead, and I should be, but I'm not.
Welcome to Second Act Stories, a podcast that looks at people who've made major life and career changes and are pursuing more rewarding lives in a second act. I'm your host, Andy Levine. There is no other way to put this. Noa Shaw has had a hard life. As you'll hear, drugs and alcohol took hold of him at an early age, and he struggled with addiction for his entire life. But 8 years ago, his life took a turn for the better when he wandered into a SoulCycle studio that was just opening up in Los Angeles. As many of you will know, SoulCycle is a fitness company that is the gold standard in cycling workouts. After his first workout, he was hooked. For 3 months, he embraced attending every day, sometimes 2 workouts per day. He lost 100 pounds, and he got himself into shape both physically and mentally. The team at SoulCycle saw something in this overweight former drug dealer, and they invited him to audition as a fitness instructor. At 57 years old, he is the oldest SoulCycle instructor on the planet. And here in New York City, he has built a dedicated following of riders that are inspired by him on a regular basis. You'll get to hear from some of them today. He invited me to come and attend his class, an intense 45-minute workout that my legs are still recovering from. In the time of COVID-19, the workout took place outdoors under a special tent set up by SoulCycle as an outdoor studio. Unfortunately, you'll hear the whirl of the studio's power generators in the background of our interview, but hopefully that won't distract from Noa's message. Here's my interview with Noa Shaw about a difficult life and an incredible second act. Tell me a little about growing up.
I had the best parents anybody could ever imagine. They were so loving and kind and warm and opening, and they're still those people. They're still the most amazing. My father was a guy from the Bronx. My mother was a modern dancer and a beatnik in the late 50s, early 60s in New York City. And so I grew up within a loving household. But at some point, I veered off with drugs and alcohol and feelings and trauma and things that occurred in my life. I became the antithesis of that. Not that I wasn't loving. I just was unable to have any level of stability in my life for many, many years.
There's a really interesting moment earlier in your book. You talk about you're 16 years old. You and your friend would basically drink vodka and orange juice every morning before school. And you look at him, you said, you know what? I'm an alcoholic at 16.
Yeah.
Just unpack that for us and replay that
It
moment.
was my friend Rusty, may he rest in peace. We used to stop at this place called Ship to Shore Liquor at, 7:30, whenever it was, on our way to school. And there was this old, rummy alcoholic, Charlie, that lived in the liquor store, and he never carded us. And we would buy, a pint of vodka and a quart of orange juice, and we would pour the orange juice out to make room for the vodka. So it's like, God forbid, some non-alcoholic
Something healthy
orange
got in your
juice,
body.
something healthy got into our body in any way, shape, or form. And I just had this moment where we were just drinking. We would chug the quart of orange juice and smoke bong hits. And while I was driving, I would put a bong in my lap, and Rusty would light it while I was driving. And I just looked at him. I said, "I'm an alcoholic," and he's like, "Yeah, so am I." And it was in retrospect, it was a very profound moment, because I realized at that moment I didn't really quite know what an alcoholic was as I do now. But what it did is it gave me a latch for my insecurity and my low self-esteem and how little I thought of myself, to finally explain why I was as horrible as I thought I was, and how little I thought of myself was true. Because my self-esteem was so low, even at a young age. I had a front of bravado and devil-may-care attitude, but the truth inside of me was I was just scared.
You've written this book, Stop Thinking Thoughts That Scare You, and you start the book with 4 really powerful words, which are, I should be dead.
How many ways should I be dead? Well, I've tried to commit suicide 3 times due to being in such a dark and lonely and scared place that, I just thought it was better off being dead. I've had multiple near ODs on drugs. I've had people try to kill me. I've had people try to throw me off a balcony 3 stories up. I've had people shoot at me. I've had people stab me. So there are a million reasons, or a million times, that I could have been dead, and I should be, but I'm not.
So Noah's life hasn't been a bowl of cherries. He's been in and out of rehab more than a dozen times. We're going to pick up the story a number of years later. Noah is now sober, and he's working as a case manager in a rather exclusive drug rehabilitation center in Beverly Hills, California.
Now, one technique which you use when you're working in mental health facilities is the act of what's called redirection. So if we're sitting outside and you're upset, say, "Come on, man, let's go inside and get something to eat." If you're inside and you're upset, I'm like, "Let's go outside and grab a cigarette." You just try to move the person from their physical location, so it gives them a chance to stop that cycle of thought and maybe start a new one as you're walking and moving locations. It's very effective. But in the course of doing that 12 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, I gained a lot of weight, and I ended up 300 pounds smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day. And I went in to get some prescriptions refilled from my doctor, and he said, "I've got some great news. It's not going to hurt a bit." I said, "Oh, am I getting a shot?" He said, "No, you're about to have a heart attack. It's going to be so massive, you'll be dead before you hit the ground. Because it's been great knowing you. I love you, and good luck."
Shortly after that meeting, you discovered SoulCycle.
Yes.
Talk about that.
I went out to buy a pair of underwear. I've been working on a very long case for about 4 months, doing 12 hours on, 12 hours off, 7 days a week. And my underwear was destroyed because I was fat, and I would destroy my underwear. And I went to go to H&M to support David Beckham's underwear line, because there was a Super Bowl ad with David Beckham in his underwear that everybody always remembers, and
that's what 300-pound men look good in, right?
300-pound man. What I really needed was like couture fucking underwear. And I believe to this day that God or my higher power or whatever you want to call it, there was an energy that was driving me to SoulCycle. So I came at the escalator, and at the top of the escalator, it was the very first hour that SoulCycle was open in West Hollywood, California.
Noah was friends with one of SoulCycle's original instructors, so he stopped in to say hello. And they asked him, "Are you going to ride today?"
And I was like, I'm about to have a heart attack. Like, I was like, sure. And they were like, oh, come back at 4 o'clock. We'll sign you up. You'll be on us. And I was like, okay, great. And I went home and, put on my 4XL t-shirt and my 3XL shorts, and I just got on a bike. And I remember taking the bike that was closest to the door. It was the front row corner, because I figured if I'm going to die during this class, I don't want to inconvenience anybody with moving my fat ass, my dead body out of the room. And then halfway through the class, I was very in my head. It's SoulCycle, when you're riding it, it's a dark room. It's very low light. There's candles. And so it's very introspective, and you have a really moment to like really get in touch with yourself. And I started thinking of all the things that I'd lived through, like, from I Should Be Dead, that, bullets and guns and knives and people's contracts out of my life and suicide attempts. Like, am I really going to die because I ate too many Egg McMuffins, and burgers? Like, is that what's going to kill me? And I was like, well, if that's what is the way it's going to be, I'm going to pedal my fucking ass off.
You have a line in the book, "SoulCycle became my sanctuary."
Yes.
It sounds like it just was an important part of turning your life around.
It was necessary. I needed to shed, emotional weight as well as physical weight. Self-esteem, self-worth, anger, sadness, fear. These all begin to weigh down on you. They weigh on you as heavily as being fat physically. I had physical weight and emotional weight that I needed to shed to be free. So I became singularly focused on losing both. I would lose myself in the music. I would push my body to the absolute limit in every class. It got to the point where people were calling SoulCycle and asking the front desk, say, do you know what class Noah is riding in? Because we want to ride with him because he inspires us.
Were you surprised when they asked you to try out to become an instructor?
Shocked. How do you go in like a little over 90 days from a doctor telling you you're going to have a deadly heart attack to somebody being like, would you like to be a fitness instructor? And I was still to this day, the only instructor at SoulCycle that does not have a fitness background. I came from a mental health world.
I got to speak with a number of devoted Noah riders at SoulCycle's outdoor studio in Brooklyn Heights. Here's what Rocky, Justin, and Emily had to say about riding with Noah.
He cares about each one of his riders. He just makes it personal for everyone.
Noah is high empathy all the time. His music is a little bit different in that it tends to skew more rock and roll and less EDM and hip hop. He has a super devoted, I would say a little bit older ridership, although my daughter, who's in college, loves Noah's class and loves Noah's spirit.
It's so much more than an exercise class, not to be cheesy, but it's a soulful experience, where some of the other classes are more athletically oriented. He focuses on like the spiritual side of SoulCycle.
I just want to make sure I got this right. You were the oldest full-time instructor for SoulCycle in the country? I mean,
was that in the entire, internationally?
in the world.
In the world, yes.
On our planet. Okay. How do you approach things differently? What's your MO?
My MO is that I show up for class to play real music for real people so that I can be as real as I can. So here's an important moment. Whereas a week ago on a Sunday, as I was walking up to teach a class, literally about 30 minutes before the class started, I found out that somebody who I was very, very close to, had OD'd, who I had tried to help be sober, had OD'd and died, and he was like a son to me. And I was about to teach an hour-long class, my personally branded class called the Rockstar Survivor. So I just tucked that away. And for an hour, I didn't talk about it. I didn't even talk about it until like 6 days later. I said something from the podium to a very small class. I was like, hey guys, ride for my friend's wife. And he passed away, and it was a motivation thing. So I'm authentic, but I don't bring my problems here. I will tell you my truth. I will tell you the things I've gone through. I will tell you my struggles. I will tell you the things that I still struggle with, but I will always offer solution.
Noa loves being a SoulCycle instructor, but his next act is taking him on a new path.
I'm a certified life coach. That's my number one preferred vocation. After I had relapsed and I started the drug dealing and I got arrested, I went to a rehab to get away from instead of prison. I was told I had to go to this meeting that had been started called Criminals and Gang Members Anonymous, that had been started by a man named Richard Mojico, who was doing a life sentence in San Quentin. And somebody began speaking about the poison they had put in the world. And in a moment that hit me. And I realized between cocaine and marijuana and the years of drug dealing, and I began to just think about the ripple effects of the poison that I had put in this world and how had that affected people. How many people became hooked on coke and died because they'd started with the cocaine? How many families were affected? How many families lost children? How many fathers, uncles, brothers, sisters, kids that went without Christmas gifts? Like, what had I done? And I realized in that moment that it became my mission to help people, that I would never be able to make a dent in it because I'd done so much, but it was imperative that I try to heal the world as much as I could until my last breath. So I'm on a mission to help people. That's it. I just want to help people.
I enjoyed the camaraderie of taking a class with Noa and his devoted following, and I really enjoyed sitting down with Noa after class for our in-depth interview. His transformation from drug addict / drug dealer to fitness instructor / life coach is one of the most dramatic that we've ever profiled. His book is called Stop Thinking Thoughts That Scare You. It's terrific, and if you're in a difficult place right now, you'll find plenty of inspiration inside. He can be reached on Instagram at Noa Shaw 26. Now, there's no H in Noah, it's NoaShaw 26. That's a different story. His email address is noashaw@mac.com. Once again, no H, NoaShaw @mac.com. As he told me, I will respond to everything. We hope you'll keep listening. There are more second act stories just around the corner.